When is Canada going to admit it? When is the government of Canada going to admit that a genocide is taking place?
More than 50,000 people have been murdered because of your silence.
The problem is that a lot of these people do openly support Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization in Canada. And there's a lot of blatant anti-Semitism at these protests too.
15 months. That's how long anti-Israel protesters have effectively been holding streets hostage in Victoria's downtown core. I say hostage because a frequent practice of their weekly demonstration is to strategically blockade intersections. Like that time, one of their frequent speakers, Anas Al-Asala, decided to block traffic to condemn our Canadian practice of wearing poppies to remember the sacrifices our veterans made for us.
I see a lot of people now wearing their red poppies on their shirts because this country helped stop a genocidal regime that was killing women and children and men, mostly Jews and Roma people, European Jews. And now it happens that those survivors have become victimizers, have become oppressors.
Now, I don't know about you, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but last time I checked, our criminal code sections 63 and 420 involving mischief and intimidation, blocking intersections doesn't qualify as Canadians' peaceful right to assembly. But I guess it's fine for the Victoria Police, who simply just give out weekly warnings like the ones you're seeing on the screen to inform the public that these so-called demonstrations, which of course coupled with their anti-Semitic and sometimes anti-Canadian chants, will be affecting traffic in the center of the city's core. It's a big difference from not too long ago, where just the rumor of a potential rolling freedom convoy coming to the same area was handled. Now, I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and today I'm standing in front of the legislature where these Hamas supporters openly, if you watch some of their previous chants, have gathered. It is raining, so I think there's less of them, but there's about 100 or some odd. And there is a small counter-protest happening as well from some locals who have had enough. Now, before I show you what happens today, I am just going to let you know I had to take a very expensive ferry to get here. I have 2 bodyguards here by my side to make sure I'm safe as I bring you this coverage. And we don't take a penny from the federal government, like over 95% of Canada's media. So please consider helping us recoup some of the costs to bring you this report by donating what you can at journalistdefensefund.com.
Remember, they were rationing their food, taking the right to eat, taking the right to drink. I seen that happen here in Canada with the history that was here from the Indigenous.
Zionist stands for zero interaction offered, no interest shown towards them whatsoever. The biggest gift you can give them is to give them attention. The biggest gift you can give to the rally, to Palestine, and to our cause is to ignore them completely. Pretend they don't exist.
As the march is heading down here, you can see there's a small group of counter-protesters that are lining half of the street. Looks like they may be doing some of the blocking today. And here you have the marchers about to approach.
Could you guys please stay beyond this side, please?
I'm going to the sidewalk. I want to go to the sidewalk. Is there a reason I can't go to that?
1, 2, 3, 4. Not a conflict, not a war. We will liberate.
Well, there you have it. It wasn't a blocking of sorts, just a passerby. The speaker had said they were going to ignore the counter-protesters. That's what happened. There were some police. There's quite a bit of police involved. I'm going to give you a shot right now so you see the amount of resources. So you're a local to the area. This demonstration, if you will, has been happening for a while. Why was it important to come out and counter-protest it today?
Well, I think it's important for all Canadians to be aware of what the stakes are, that these are demonstrations that have no street permit, that are essentially occupying streets, disrupting traffic, harassing passersby, screaming slogans, intimidating and annoying a lot of pedestrians. I find it to be incomprehensible that Canada would permit public demonstrations of this type without any kind of conditions or terms attached to their conduct.
The MC of this rally, Anas al-Sala, and many people who do regularly show up to these rallies, they've called Hamas resistance fighters. Some of them have publicly celebrated October 7th on their social media. There's a lot of really aggressive chanting, like there is only one solution, Intifada revolution. There's been chanting in Arabic, such as from water to water, Palestine will be Arab. That's an obvious call to rid Israel of its Jewish population. They've been blocking the roads. They've been holding up intersections. They've been guilt-tripping the public. They've been chanting things like Canada, Canada, shame, shame. Killing kids is not a game. They've been very hostile to the public and pretty much anyone who disagrees with them, essentially. And the MC, he's not speaking right now. Right before Remembrance Day, gave a speech where he shamed Canadians for wearing poppies because, in his words, basically, Holocaust survivors colonized Palestine. There's just a lot of negativity towards Western culture. There's been a lot of support for terrorism. It's been quite open. And a lot of hostility towards the Jewish community as well, especially the Zionist Jewish community. But most Jews are Zionists. Most Jews support Israel's right to exist. So anti-Zionism really is anti-Semitism when you look at it.
I would like to argue with each one of them, like get down to the facts. They don't want to do that. They're just kind of engrossed in this mob mentality, and they've got safety in numbers, or comfort in numbers. So my friend Nick told me about today, and I thought, well, the least I can do is come down here, and that's all. Just kind of show some support.
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what these protests are. There's definitely a group of people that are definitely for ending conflict. But then there's a small percentage within these activists that are linked to more extremist groups, towards anarchist organizations, definitely linked to a lot of the institutes with education that are pushing a very harmful narrative that are trying to paint Israel and Jews as genocidal people. And they're repeating lies every week. And unfortunately, a lot of people are buying into it. I've been filming protests for 5 years across various spectrums. And unfortunately, there's a very small group of individuals that are influencing what I would say vulnerable people, those who aren't really aware of what's going on on a global sense, but they find a sense of belonging and purpose by hanging out with these other activists. Every week they get together, they get on their Zoom calls, they get on their Signal chats, and they feel included, but they're very misguided. And it's unfortunate that we're seeing innocent people being harmed by being dragged into basically a mob-type cult organization led by some hardcore extremists.
They spread hate and lies. They don't know their histories, right? They call Israel a terrorist state when in fact they're getting rid of terrorists. They call Israel an occupier when in fact they've been out of Gaza since 2005, and they left the complete infrastructure for them to live peacefully. But that's not what they did. They dug tunnels and they amassed weapons. They could have made themselves into Dubai with the amount of money that they received from UNRWA and the UN and all the Western countries.
Now, I don't see the poster now. I did see it on the grounds of the legislature, so I know they had it here. But it's an image of a very sick-looking child that, of course, they want to represent a Gazan child. But the truth is, the photo that circulates in the movement it's quite old. It has nothing to do with this particular conflict. It's just a piece of misinformation that gets carried around for some reason.
Do not let the Canadian government be complicit in this genocide in your name, because this is what's happening right now, and it needs to stop. We have a role to play And this is our role, to call on the Canadian government to stop arming this genocide.
Unbelievable, happening right now for months on end, every single week. Obstruction takes place from anti-Israel protesters, and it seems to be okay with the police. They've blocked off an intersection entirely in Victoria in the busy area of Government Street. And it's just okay. Imagine if the Freedom Convoy tried anything like this. It looks like they're on the move now, but it is unbelievable to see the difference.
End the occupation now. End the siege on Gaza now.
Did you have something to say to me? I saw you were talking to me. Did you have something?
I wouldn't give it that.
Don't touch my mic, please. You were talking to me.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Somebody's grandma. Somebody come get your grandma over here. Angry grandma.
Starbucks, you can't hide! You make drinks for genocide! Boycott, boycott, no more die! No more money for Israel's crime! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
The police try to keep it under control. In other cities, it is clearly not that way. Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver have seen scenes that are extraordinarily disruptive, that are intimidating. People wear masks. People are using smoke bombs. The conduct of these political demonstrations is inconsistent with Canadian political traditions and should be called out. And if necessary, legislative changes need to happen.
I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that it's public mischief, right? I mean, like the streets are for everyone. They can't just do this. But the cops obviously are doing nothing but protecting them, putting up no resistance.
If this was Old Grove protesters or the Freedom Convoy, chances are they wouldn't have been allowed to march. There would have been blockades. But just a few weeks ago, Anas, who just spoke previously, blocked the intersection. It's a major one in the tourist area at Wharf and Government for 8 straight minutes. And the drivers eventually did U-turns to get away from it. And normally when he blocks the intersection, he blocks it for a straight 5 minutes, often longer, and he shames the public for not doing enough to stop the war in Gaza. He urges them to write to their MLAs, but let's be honest, could an MLA in a small town in Canada really do anything about a war in the Middle East at the other side of the world? They know that's not realistic. I think they just want to impose their cause on the public.
Behind me at Government Street in Victoria is about the 4th, maybe 5th intersection that anti-Israel protesters have effectively blockaded.
15 months of bombs from Canada raining down on Palestinian children and women. It is a war crime, and Canada is complicit.
Excuse me.
And that is why we are here. We want the genocide to stop. We want you to help us stop this genocide. We want you to be involved. We want you to call upon your MP, your politicians.
Excuse me, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't. Excuse me. Don't touch me.
Canadian citizens, we need your help to stop this genocide.
Do not lose your balance.
When we march, you'll often hear us say,
how am I pathetic?
Money for health
What's
and
pathetic about
education,
me?
not for war and occupation.
Can I ask you why it's important to be here since you approached me? You seem like you want to talk to me, right?
All the while,
I didn't approach
Canadians are struggling to
No,
make
you
ends
approached
meet.
me. Share your cause. Don't touch me, please.
If you want to come and
You're a little
claim to be
short to
patriot
try to block me, just so you know.
and
it
wave a
doesn't really
Canadian
work
flag,
very well.
When you support
sending
Outside, it's called
Canadians
it's called the media.
to Israel and not
It's
to
called
Canadians.
I'm
to help
reporting.
Canadians who are struggling.
Why is it important to be here today?
Excuse me, pardon?
Why is it important for you to be here today? And why are you guys getting aggressive? I've been peacefully covering this whole thing. It's called journalism. It's not a side.
You want to send Canadians out to Israel, and Canadians don't want that.
Why is it important to be here today, sir?
Starving children.
And so what would you like, Canada or British
Israel
Columbia?
is starving children.
What do you think Canada should do about it?
Occupation.
Starting to get a little aggressive here. Thankfully, I have my security with me. It's I don't know why all of a sudden their own leader or speaker here told them to just be peaceful, but of course it's not happening. Anyways, what I was trying to point out is that this is the third intersection to be blocked by the demonstrators. Right in the center here, you can see.
When is Canada going to admit it? When is the government of Canada going to admit that a genocide is taking place?
When Arabs criticize the Palestinians, they get murdered.
Boycott Israel. Talk to your MP and ask them to stop weapons exports to the Israeli regime.
More than 50,000 people have been murdered because of your silence.
The challenge is they don't denounce Hamas. So it's one thing to say that they're anti-Zionist, which is actually ironic because it just means that Israel should have a right to exist, and it is their ancestral land. And unfortunately, then they start bringing into the First Nations comment of Canada, and they mud the issue by somehow equating what's going on with occupation of Canada and residential schools to what's happening in Israel, not understanding that you do not see First Nations people in Canada openly marching the streets, calling for the destruction of the government of Canada. What they're doing is they're sitting down, they're meeting with the politicians, they're meeting with the governments, they've established themselves so that they can actually meet through truth and reconciliation. Meanwhile, these protests and what we're seeing in Gaza and with Hamas is to annihilate anyone who resists them. That's certainly not a peaceful two-state solution. It's not certainly similar to what the First Nations people in Canada are doing. And yet they somehow conflate those two issues, saying that somehow the First Nations people are occupied by Canadians, so Canadians are thus evil people, not realizing that they themselves are foreigners in Canada trying to occupy our streets, trying to occupy our way of lives, and then turning around and then trying to say the people of Gaza who are Palestinians, who are not from Israel originally, somehow have greater right over that land just because they're louder or more violent.
All throughout the West, no one's really serious about giving back Canada, giving back New Zealand, giving back Australia. What's going to happen is that there'll be an ongoing kind of guilt money that will be paid and all that kind of stuff. But Israel's the one place. It's small enough in this giant ocean of Arab, Muslim anti-Semitism. It's the one place that they think that they can actually pull it off. They can, just squeeze out that little sliver of Western colonialism, even if it's not that.
Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel. They have lived there for 4,000 years continuously. I've been said, go back to Europe. You are an imperialist. This is completely misinformation. There are still paid protesters here with a very loud, as you can see, chants. And they normally call for intifada revolution. There is no solution. That's a common chant. And again, from the river to the sea is calling for the elimination of Israel. So again, it's all slander against Israel instead of blaming terrorists. Hamas. They're the ones that attacked and slaughtered whole families, took in a 9-month-old Kiefer Babis, a baby who's still a hostage to this day. Okay, so they committed genocide on October 7th. That is the definition of genocide. 97% of Jews are Zionists, which just means the self-determination of a tiny little one Jewish country in the world, okay? So that's it. There's no difference between Zionism and Jews.
So unfortunately, we're stuck in a situation where these are unpermitted, unlawful blockades. They violate two sections that I'm aware of the Canadian Criminal Code, but they're allowed to persist because they are caught basically challenging the police's ability to uphold the peace. And it's very frustrating because I've seen a lot of motorists quite upset by this. Granted, it's 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but at previous protests, it adds up to 20 minutes out of a 60-minute march. So 1/3 of their march is actually blockading people who have a charter right to free mobility in their own country.
We're not happy with the streets of our city being hijacked for a foreign issue and to spread extremism and hatred. And if these were just Old Grove protesters, I would simply just find them annoying, and so would most of the public. But the problem is that a lot of these people do openly support Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization in Canada. And there's a lot of blatant anti-Semitism at these protests too. I've seen a lot of signs with swastikas right next to the Star of David. I had an elderly woman approach me and tell me that Hamas wouldn't have raped any woman on October 7th because Jewish women are too ugly to be raped. And the other protesters just laughed at it, which was insane to me.
This kind of noise is disruptive to people, so Victoria bylaws should be activated. There is no reason why, like here they are occupying an intersection, disrupting traffic, all these motorists, buses, people who need to get to wherever it is they're going are disrupted because of this nonsense.
At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story, even when there are safety risks at time for doing so. Thankfully, I had bodyguards by my side, and there was mainly only grandmas upset with me or getting a little aggressive. But you never know what could happen. If you appreciate that Rebel News gets our boots on the ground to bring you many reports, please consider going to our special website called journalistdefensefund.com to help us recoup some of the security costs to do so.